Welcome to my weekly review. Today is Saturday, May 24. The stock market is closed on Monday due to Memorial Day and will reopen on Tuesday. So we have a short week next week. 2 weeks ago, the Nasdaq rallied 7.15%, and I thought, and I told, the folks at MC Stock Charts to expect a pullback, and that's what we got. 2.47%. So I'll take that ratio every time, up 715, down 2.47. But all anybody's interested in is where do we go from here? I think we're going to rally this summer. I don't know if it's going to be next week or the first week of June but we're going to rally higher. I believe that's my opinion. Why? Well, there's a lot of charts of leading stocks that are setting up. They're all not going to work. They're all not going to break out, but some of them will and lead the index higher. But we had, three things last week that should have brought the market crashing down, and it didn't. The first one was the downgrade of debt from Moody's, which, I was reading over the weekend last weekend that the market's going to implode. Last time it was down 6 or 7%, and it might still do that. It was down 2.5 last week. It didn't really crash. I mean, it held up pretty well. And then we had the bad auction day last week, which brought it down. But still, it held up. And then on Thursday had a, inside day. And then on Friday, we had the president tweeting about 50% tariffs on European imports. And the market still, kind of shrugged it off. It was down 1% on Friday. You could see this is a daily chart of the Nasdaq where it's still 6.7% above its 50 and 1.8% above this black line, the 200. And it might pull back to the 200 and find support. But what I'm encouraged by is the 10 now is above the 200, and the 21, barring some disaster, is going to rally through the 200 as well. So we're trending nicely. I believe we're going to track like we did in 2018, 2019. If you'll indulge me, I'll show this one again where it just rallied to new highs above the old 81.33 from August of 2018. We just had this V-shaped rally. Yeah, there was some pullbacks, along the way, but it made a new high of 81.76. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I just gave you three, real negative news items that didn't drive the market down. And I think, we're going to get some, if bad news can't drive it down, then it's probably going to go the other way. And like I said, there's a lot of leading charts set up. The Nasdaq here is at what, 18,737. Yeah, I believe it's going over 20,000 too in time, sometime this summer or early fall, but it's going to get its legs again and rally. And I'm going to get to that in a minute with all of the, the stocks. I'm a stock trader, and I just kind of look at stocks. I like the tailwinds from the index. I find it's much easier to trade than when we have headwinds. It's much more challenging to trade when we have headwinds from the index. But anyway, the Nasdaq was down, what did I say, 2.47% last week. So your trading was probably a little more challenging last week. I know my account was down last week, big deal, who cares? But just hang in there. I think better times are coming here, and you need a little bit of a breather, a little bit of digestion of these massive gains. And when we have these rallies, it comes in spurts, this big rally, and then, you go flat for a little bit. Then you have a big rally, and you go flat for a little bit. Then we had this big rally Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from 2 weeks ago, and then it went flat. And then last, week it pulled back a little bit, but, it's going to spurt again towards 20,000. Um, Everybody has an opinion of the market, and that's what's fascinating about it. And it's kind of like golf, where you can only try to get better, you'll never master it. And so I'm just trying to get better every day. I'm not predicting anything. That's just my expectations that it will trade higher. All right. Like I said, I'm all about stocks, and I've got to go to the big stock here, Apple. It's down like 8 days in a row. Rallied up to its moving average and got rejected, then rallied up to the moving average and got rejected again. And this is part of the Dow, it's part of the SPY, it's part of the Nasdaq. So this is an important stock. And we need to get this thing at least stabilized and not going down every darn day in order for us to have a meaningful rally. Anyway, I don't consider that, a leading stock. It impacts and influences the indexes, but it's not a leading stock. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but I want to go through, it's earnings season. I want to get through some earnings reports last week. I'm just going to do earnings. I'm going to do leading stocks and leading groups, and I'm going to do next week's earnings, and that's the format for the review this week. That's all. Just reviewing last week. AS nice response to their earnings report. Same with NBIS. These two, like every morning, I post a relative strength screen for the folks at mcstockcharts.com, and these two are in it. There's usually about 20 to 25 stocks in there. And last week there was like six energy stocks, so you had to know something was up. Once again, I'll get there in a minute, but this is NBIS. And we're seeing a lot of this where a stock rallies up and then just kind of goes sideways, pulls back to this 10 EMA. That's a very healthy pattern in my opinion, and I think it's going to go higher. I don't have to say my opinion because I'm the one talking, so it's got to be my opinion. Snowflake had a nice earnings report. You can see the cup with handle pattern. There's that shelf type pattern I'm talking about once again, where it just rallies up and then doesn't sell off, back to the, crashing through the 21 or crashing through the 50. It just kind of goes sideways. And then it had a nice report. So that leads people to believe that, the AI software names we're reporting this week, like Elastic, and some of the others are going to have a similar fate. We'll see if the pen action happens with those stocks. But Snow had a nice response. Urban, retail's been kind of tough. Had a nice gap up here on earnings. So this is one not to be ignored. Dan, it was up 22% with 310% above average daily volume. Advanced Auto Parts, what a move. Like 50 something percent, 57% move on Thursday. So I would say that's a pretty positive response to an earnings report. Autodesk reported a Thursday, I believe, and had a nice little rally on Friday. Oh, gave some back, did it? Okay. All right. I had this one in my positive column. It's barely positive. I know Intuit did a little better. This is up, yeah, 8.12%. Nice rally there with volume. We're into it. Now, on the other side, we had some other, real losers. Target. I don't know what's going on with this stock. I don't know if they're going to fire the CEO, but they're definitely headed in the wrong direction. This is a dividend aristocrat stock, but still, I mean, if you held this thing, let's see, with the top here was at 260 and now it's at 94. I don't care how much dividend. That's a rough pill to swallow right there. So Target needs to rethink their strategy. Walmart's and Costco are obviously kicking their butt. Viking, this is a one of those river tour leisure services stocks. Not a great response to earnings. With the economy kind of slowing, maybe the boomers are pulling back on their trips. I don't know. HD and Lowe's reported, poor response here. Rallied up to the 200, got rejected. You got to figure that Home Depot did a great, business during the COVID when people were at home remodeling, but since then, it's really sold off, and that makes sense to me. As people are out and about spending money elsewhere, and especially at rates at 7%, they're not fixing up their homes and selling them. I shouldn't laugh because people are having a hard time selling their homes. Kind of sucks, actually. Palo Alto Networks reported did the same thing. They beat and then sandbag guidance and then sold off. And then the next couple of days, I wouldn't say rallied up, but it traded higher, maybe 3% higher. That's kind of what Palo Alto Networks does, good reports and then sell off because they sandbag guidance. So that's good. Consistency is good, the reliability. Ralph Lauren, and kind of a muted response to their report. Like I said, retail has been really tough. Ross stores, ouch. They got hammered. Deckers, another retail name, just got hammered. And then, okay, I'll go to a software name, Workday. Yeah, they got hammered too. So it wasn't just retail. All right, that's it for the earnings last week. I want to get to the leading stocks because I like to buy, sell, trade, own, hold leading stocks. The way to be successful in the stock market is being able to identify a market direction, which I just showed you earlier. We're in a nice V-shaped uptrend. And stock selection. You want to own leading stocks, and Netflix certainly is. I'm going to change the moving average to the 5 right now because leading stocks, have been finding support at the 5 or thereabouts. Now, last week, it was a pullback week for the market. Netflix was down, 0.5%, just pulled back to that moving average. There is a 4-week line, but yeah, the 5, yeah, it closed right at the 5. So I would expect a bounce from Netflix next week if you're trading that stock, if you're long calls, but anything can happen. Palantir, another leader. As the Nasdaq, I said, went down what 2.5%. So this is down nearly 5%, and that's kind of what leading growth stocks do. They appreciate 2 to 3 or 4 times the market, and when it pulls back, they pull back 2 to 3, 4 times the market. Palantir, twice the market. On the downside, just had an inside week last week. And there you could see the pulling back on a lighter volume. Palantir to me looks to me on the daily like it wants to go higher. I know. I don't say every stock is going higher. Believe me, the drug stocks, the solar stock, there's a lot of stocks not doing well. So I'm just pointing out the leading stocks here, and I think that one's going higher. Spotify, top stock in the top group. This is education media ranked the second group, the top performing group. You can see it pull back to the 21 last week right here, and then bounced on Friday nearly 3%. The 21 is at 631.39. It pulled back to 628. So technical trading there, mechanical trading for Spotify, just one of the leaders. And if you've owned this for any amount of time, uh, it's just you don't have to hold it very long for it to trade to make money. You can see here they had the 3 weeks tight pattern. Uh, Going into next week. So I'm expecting Spotify to bounce. And this is part of the reason why I think either next week or the week after, we're going to start to see a rally here in these, because the leading stocks are set up for it. DUOL, like I said, you don't have to own Spotify very long to make money. Every time I sell it, it goes higher. So I just decided to hold it, and I've been holding it for a while now. All right, who cares what I own, right? Duolingo pull back to its. This one closed on the 5 as well. So like Netflix, this is like a little bull wedge pattern that Netflix and Duolingo are forming here, and I would expect those to bounce. Now they don't have to. There's no rule that they have to bounce. They could slice the 10, they could slice the 21, they could trade down to the 50 and go back to that old buy point and be perfectly fine. But I'm expecting them to bounce because we're in a strong uptrend. All right, Carvana, another leading stock. If you and we're seeing this a lot lately. If you belong to MC Stock Charts, you see that relative strength screen that I post every morning, and those stocks are stocks to pay attention to because they're trending higher. You could see this one, and we're seeing a lot of this, and this is a type of movement that you need to pay attention to. Big rally from what 148 to over 300, and it just goes sideways. It doesn't crash, it doesn't sell off. Institutions are comfortable paying $300 for Carvana. So this tells me that, kind of a little bit of stealth accumulation here. It closed 1.2% above the 5. I think it's going higher. Eventually, maybe not tomorrow. Well, obviously not tomorrow because tomorrow's Sunday, but maybe not next week. But in the following few weeks, I think Carvana is a buy right there at whatever it is, 300, 304. All right, Chewy's another one that, nobody talks about Chewy. It's dog food or it's pet related. Who cares? I care. I love my pet. Anyway, it went rallied up from 29 to 43, and once again, just kind of going sideways here. And this is the type of action that tells me that I believe after, I wouldn't call it a shakeout. It's just kind of a shelf. It's just a rest period. All runners need rest. We have the Indianapolis 500 tomorrow. You're going to see cars pulling into the pit stop. And that's what this is doing, just taking a little pit stop rest, getting a tire change, getting new rubbers. And going to get back on the road real soon. Groupon, another one. Not a lot of people talk about, but this is a hell of a move from 16 to 26. And what's it doing? Just going sideways. It looked like it wanted to pop on Friday, but obviously the market, was not cooperating. Yeah, it went up to 27.87, pulled back a buck. Groupon. So a lot of these leading names are looking like this. And GEV, another leader, straight up from the lows, 252 to what, 450, 460. Yeah. I would expect this to go, so I expected it to go sideways right here around 450, but now it's 464 and it just looks like it wants higher. Obviously, the news from the executive order that the president signed to influence this stock on Friday, as well as many energy names. Speaking of energy, another stock on this screen that I keep referring to in post, and you've got to look at that screen at the bottom of the page every morning because those are the stocks that are trending higher. This is NRG. Once again, big move off the lows, right? This one came from 79 up to 150, and it's just going sideways here at 150 to 160. To me, that's, if you don't own it, it's going to give you a chance before it's going to move higher, in my opinion. I don't have to say it's in my opinion because I'm the only one talking here. So my English teacher told me. Roblox, incredible strength there from 50 up to 80. And this again, this is the pattern that I'm seeing a lot of while Nasdaq was down last week. This one was just going flat. Weekly review, got to show the weekly chart. You could see that cup with handle pattern, the move higher. Yeah, it was still up 1% last week, even though the Nasdaq was floundering. I think these are going higher, folks. There's leading stocks that are showing up on my screens, and these are telling me they want higher prices. Like I said, they're not all going to work, and some of them will fail. But man, I love this pattern here, and I'm seeing it a lot out of these leading stocks. This is SE from 99 up to 165 and just trending sideways. It's not going to go sideways forever. Hmm. I'm going to go to the mega cap tech stocks because there's a couple of them that I like. Tesla, straight up from the lows. What was it, like 215 now here at 340? Once again, a leading stock just going sideways. This looks like stealth accumulation to me. Institutions are going to be buying that one. I think it's going higher. Oh, no, I'm not going to show that one, am I? I can't because it's reporting earnings. So Meta, coupled with handle pattern. This one gave back a little bit last week with the indexes. Stands to reason. It's one of those big influencers. You got social media influencers. These are index influencers, Meta platforms, Google, Tesla, Apple, Microsoft, blah, blah, blah. The Lag 7. All right, what else do I have here from leading stocks? Oh, DoorDash, one of these stocks. Sometimes you like stocks more than others, just like, my students, I like some more than others. Love them all, but I like some more than others. I like DoorDash more than most stocks. DoorDash, Robinhood and Bros, Rubric, TGTX. Those are just some stocks that I just have success trading and stocks that I like and stocks that I'm holding. And I just like the monthly chart there. You can see the double bottom base pattern. And once again, it's doing that same damn thing here. And I think these are going to lead to higher prices. I could be wrong. Once again, often wrong, never in doubt. But you can see the double bottom base pattern hasn't broken out yet, and I think it will. Just I don't know, I don't know what you call it, intuition, experience. I don't know. It could fail though. Core Weave, this is one that I traded last week. I just got rid of it because my goal as a trader is just to beat the S&P, and I'm doing that. I just peeked at my portfolio this morning, which I don't do very often. But this, stuff like this helps. It helps cut out, some of your losers. If you cut your losses at 4 and 5%, a nice 100% gain will kind of alleviate some of the pain from those paper cuts. So, but I sold this one on, I think, Wednesday when it hit like 101, and I thought I was a freaking genius, right? And then it rallied up to like 109. I felt like an idiot. So I sold half there. And then on Thursday morning, the pre-market, it was up to like 112. So I cut the rest of it loose. It was just getting too hot for me. But it came back to 100. And I had some friends saying, I'm going to buy puts here. And I said, man, it's probably going to have some bulls, at least a few bulls try to fight that 100 level. And sure enough, on Friday, we had like Custer's last stand or whatever. A little bighorn here at 100. And then we got the bulls to buy it up a little bit up to 105. But this is very interesting to me. Core Weave, this is one that certainly could crash and burn it. It also could pull back to that 5 there, which was what, 96, fake out the bears and then just rally up to new highs. In fact, if I was younger, I would be all in on this one, pressing the gas. But at my age, I don't want to. This thing has the ability to run up as we've seen, and I haven't seen the downside, and I don't want to hold it when it does. And so those of you who own puts, good luck to you. I can see both sides on this one, but definitely a leading stock showing up on our screens, obviously, because it's above all the moving averages and showing relative strength. All right, those are the leading stocks. I want to get to some groups now. One is the cyber group. This is one of my favorite groups because it's an essential in this market. I'm looking for essentials that are, people are going to need, like CrowdStrike. You need cybersecurity, man. All these businesses, you better have it because if you have a breach, you're in big trouble. And Rubrik is my favorite in the group. When I started, um, on this rubric crusade, it was a 10 billion market cap stock, and now it's at 18 billion. I said, well, rubric at 10 could go to, 50. It could be a five bagger, and now it's already at 18. So it's well on its way. I expect a pullback at some point, but you ride that trend till it bends at the end. You could see this one. I think it was up every day last week, pretty much. And look at this weekly, it's relentless every week here, 6 weeks in a row, just pounding, higher, new highs, week after week, day after day, up 8% last week while the Nasdaq was down 2.5%. I think that's speaking pretty loudly. Obviously, Palo Alto reported last week, had an impact on some of these cybersecurity names. CrowdStrike, I talked about this pattern over and over. You're going to get sick of me talking about it, but that 451.15, yeah, that's going to continue to be on my ready list, even though it had a good week last week. What was it up? Yeah, 3.7%. I'll take that when the Nasdaq's down. I still think it's going higher. It's got that shelf pattern that we're seeing in all of these leading stocks. Okta is a leading cybersecurity stock as well. Once again, does that look familiar? Yeah. Pull back to the 21, and I'm all in on this one. Weekly was down 2.8 with the index last week, so that's fine. You can see that weekly chart hasn't even broken out yet. And then Zscaler, another leader within the cybersecurity. Huh, does that look familiar? I wonder. All right. I'm being a wise guy. All right, I told you not to give up. You never give up at MC Stock Charts, and people give up on these gold stocks, and all they did was undercut the 50. Like I said earlier, every runner needs a breather, and every race car needs to pull into the pit stop. Well, that's what these did. This is AEM Agnico Eagle. It went from 76 to 126, undercut the 50 and then just rallied back through. Now these are a little defensive, so when the Nasdaq's down, yeah, this is up 10% last week. So this is why we don't give up on these quite yet. I get it when it's below the 50, I take them off my leading stock list because I don't want to take that trip to the 200. I'm not that kind of guy, but you just got to acknowledge strength there. Harmony, this is a leading stock in this group this year. This one just pulled back to its 50 and then rallied. It was up, 9.5% last week. Thank you very much. We'll take that all week long. WPM, Wheaton Precious Metals, up 10.5% last week. Still consolidating within the base there. You can see it's only been 5 weeks, but yeah, that one could show up on a ready list right there. Little extended from the five, but that thing looks pretty damn good to me. Super strong last week. Nice undercut and rally for that gold stock. All right. I'm going to move on to the nuclear because I mentioned earlier that President Trump signed the executive order, which really helped these nuclear names. Now, OKLO, like I said earlier, there was like six energy stocks on my relative strength screen. Now, out of 24, 25, you're looking at 20 to 25% of these are energy names. OKLO is one of them, up 23% on Friday. I think this thing's going higher. It's got a massive short interest here, 21% of that 78 million in the float are short. And you can see this is just, forming this little base here. And it's been up, what, 5 or 6 weeks in a row, maybe a little extended on the daily, but I could see it taking out that 59.14 very easily. It needs maybe a pullback, but it'll get there eventually. This is a NNE, only up 30% on Friday. SMR up on news because these things are heavily shorted when the shorts get fried. It is rocket fuel for these stocks. New Scale is another one, and then LEU Centrus Energy, a nice 22% move on Friday. Also, some of the pin action from some of these other names. Vistra had a little 2% bounce on the news. Same with Constellation and Talon, another energy name. And of course, the uranium play. This is Energy Fuels UUUU is a ticker up 20%. And then Cameco had a nice day as well on that news. Nice cup with handle breakout. That's not to be ignored, Dan. 11% move. Let's take a look at the weekly on that one. This is a weekly review. I showed you a breakout, and it looks like it, broke above its downtrending line, right? Which is fine. But I still think this has room to go higher. And even though it was up, 14% last week and 11% on Friday, but that breakout, it closed near the highs of the session. Yeah, this is a move definitely not to be ignored. 98%. So it's got that hammer candle, which indicates probably some more buyers out there. All right. That's it for the miners, energy, gold, and all that stuff. I want to get to another group. I talk about rotation all the time. In a healthy bull market, we get rotation. We saw some rotation into these quantum computing stocks last week. This is Rigatoni up 18%. Rigetti Computing, not Dave Rigetti, just Rigetti Computing, the old Giants pitcher, or should I say Yankees for you New Yorkers. Uh, IONQ up 30%. This is another one that I had on the ready list last week. If you got it, great. If you didn't, don't fret. I just showed you a ton of charts, that had that look, right? That went sideways for a while and then popped, right? I mean, I'm showing you a ton of these and it popped. So if you missed it, oh well. I mean, there's a ton of others that are going to break out. And like I mentioned, the rotation. Maybe some money comes out of these and goes into some of those other groups that I showed you. Here's another one, D-Wave, which had a nice week last week. Friday, a little pullback, profit taking into the weekend, but a 53% week. I think we'll take that. Okay. So rotation into the nuclear. The nuclear stocks went nuclear. The energy and the uranium, the quantum computing. And then I've got to talk about the defensive names, How I Met Your Mother. One of my faves here, another leading stock, in the defensive group. Yeah, just going sideways here, just forming that shelf, pulling back to its five last week. I think it was actually up last week. Yeah, 1.4%. Just making new highs. This thing just doesn't want to go down. It's like rubric, right? It just keeps going higher. It closed a tick above its five, which shows relative strength there. That's always on my relative strength list. Same with, no, not GE is not. It's below its five, right? No, it's a tick above it. Maybe GE is on there because it's got the volume, it's got the profile. All right. GE is another good one. Then, oh, Curtis Wright, Curtis Webb, Curtis Wright, yeah, making new highs. 266 up to 428. Thank you very much. That's a nice hell of a move off the low here and just making new highs. You can see these hammer candles every week, which tells me, when it closes the week like that at the highs every damn week, and the next week it goes higher, right? Close at the 94% of the daily range. 2 weeks ago, close at the 99% of the daily range. Last week, 93%. Probably going higher, even though it's hard to buy something that's that extended, 2.4% above its five. Maybe wait till it comes back because it's like a magnet. Every time it comes back to the five, it bounces. So Curtis Wright is a beast. And then L3 Harris, somebody who said they were buying it because I don't know, was going to get some contract for the Golden Dome. I don't know. That's not a good reason to buy a stock. But once again, this shelf type pattern and then popped higher inside day on Friday, but it had a nice week, 3% move. So that's the defensive names. And I'm going to go to the construction group because I had a couple of these on my ready list last week. I didn't have Quanta, but I like this one. Pull back to the 21, had a quiet day on Friday, an inside day. Yeah, just a quiet week. I like the pullback here, the cup, and then the pullback. So I think that one's going higher as well. I think everything's going higher. That's what you probably think, but no, I got to mention the drug stocks, solar stocks. There's a lot of stocks getting hammered. So I'm not just a perma bull. This one, once again, forming this little shelf pattern, pulling back gently, forming like a little bull wedge pattern, sterling infrastructure. Another one that I like. God, I like a lot of stocks, don't I? Just certain areas. Road, I did have this one on my ready list, just forming this little shelf here quietly. Maybe it wasn't ready last week, maybe next week or the following week, but it was up 1.3% while the Nasdaq was down 2.5. So thank you very much. That's not a bad move at all. AGX was another one on my ready list last week. Probably going to take it off. It's getting a little extended. You can see that cup, no handle, just making new highs, and you can see the relative strength line, the blue dot, up 7.8% last week. Thank you very much. That's what you paid for, right? All right. Now I've got it. I'd be remiss if I did not mention the crypto went ballistic last week for whatever reason, but Coinbase has had a nice move since being, what was it, included in the S&P. That's what this gap up was all about here 2 weeks ago. And then it continued higher, just rallying along the five there. It closed just a tick above the five. Coinbase looks good. Hood is in this group as well. It's a weekly review, so I got to show the weekly chart. Yeah, up 2.2% last week, forming this little base. And I think I showed you earlier, this IPO base. I'm a sucker for stuff like that. So I like Robinhood as well. Once again, forming that little shelf here, not quite breaking out yet. And I know people are going to say double top. Any cup with handles a goddamn double top. Excuse my French. I'm sorry. But that makes a market, right? People say double top, they short it, and then they get their asses handed to them. They get fried when Robinhood trades up to 100, which it's going to do. I'm convinced of it. I'm going to will it in my brain. All right, MicroStrategy, they're just too levered. This guy's selling too much stock to buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin was up a ton last week, and this guy tanked 7.5%. It's still above its 50, but man, it crashed below its 21. And this type of tape, I just showed you a ton of stocks that are, above their five, and this one crashed its 21. So this is adios muchachos. For me, I wouldn't even consider it. But it did have that, shelf type pattern and failed. So they don't always work, right? All right. Moving on from the crypto names, coin, MicroStrategy. Oh, yeah, this is the exchange traded fund that, just kind of plays along with the price of Bitcoin. It was up 4.5% last week. So nice cup shape pattern there for that one as well. All right. So now I just got to say thank you for watching. A lot of stuff going on. I'm pretty positive on this market. I like the trend. I like a lot of the leading stocks that I showed you. Just look for my ready list on Tuesday morning. Tricked you. I see a lot of stocks that, even that I didn't show here today that are setting up that will be on the ready list, but I want to keep it focused, to 4, 5, 6 names. Thank you for watching at mcstockcharts.com. We never give up except for none other great Steve Jobs. We stay hungry, we stay foolish, we stay humble. And we also pay attention to earnings reports this week. We're going to hear from AutoZone. I just showed you AAP on last week, have that 50% move. So watch out for AutoZone. I'm not saying it's going to go 50%, not at all. OKTA reports as well earlier in the week. Cybersecurity has been really strong. That stock is set up. Box reports, Dix. I'm not real confident in the retail right now, and this thing's sold off. Maybe it's sold off enough into earnings that it'll get a bounce. That looks like a Jim Morrison trade. Been down so long, it's got to go up, right? Man, that thing's been hammered. And then Abercrombie and Fitch reports. This is another one, kind of like Elf. Had the big run, made the top. Now it's going down the other side of the mountain. You got your stage one, your stage two. If I could get the line pin, yeah, you got your stage one, you got your stage two, you got your stage three, and now it's in a stage four decline. But it might, find a bottom and then, be like a turnaround play, as Peter Lynch talks about. Turnaround plays are very lucrative. Speaking of which, Elf reports next week. I did mention Elf. Elf, the same profile, stage one, excuse me, stage two. Here's your stage one, stage two, and then it stayed in stage three for this little cup. trying to tease people. It's going higher, right? Nope. Oop, got the old okey doke. Form maybe a bottom here and has rallied sharply. So I like Elf. I mean, I think they have good products, great leadership. And yeah, it's made a nice move off that 49.40. They report next week, and I can't go much further without talking about the mighty NVIDIA. They report, they've had strong quarters and have not been rewarded. Maybe this time they get rewarded. I mean, this thing has been going sideways for a long, 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 long time. What did it make this high? It was 140 back in June of 24, so it's been a year. It's at 131, despite reporting quarter after quarter, this phenomenal growth. So we'll have to see, but that will definitely be a big influence on our markets next week. Salesforce, this is the Dow Jones component. They report next week. Good leadership there from Benioff. We'll see what they have to say. NTNX, this one I'm just posting because this one has a tendency to move a lot on earnings. We'll see what they have to say. Viva Systems, computer software medical, consolidating in a base. Another cybersecurity name, Sentinel One, kind of a laggard in the group. Not really too sure. SNPS. This is computer software designed for semiconductors, so it has an influence on the strength of the semiconductors, which have been kind of lagging. I think I mentioned Elastic. Maybe it'll do something like Snowflake did. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Zscaler reports. I showed that one earlier. Ulta Beauty. Not a real fan of retail right now, but it's got that cup with handle. Little pullback. Maybe we get a move from Ulta next week. American Eagle, they report, yeah, retail's been kind of tough. Foot Locker got bought out. They report. BBY reports. The Gap reports. The Gap had this nice move recently. NTAP reports and BBW, Build-A-Bear. The kids love Build-A-Bear. Heck, the adults love it too. Don't kid yourself. Nice cup with handle there. Pullback, to a moving average on light volume. Hmm. We'll see what Build-A-Bear has to say. Anyway, exciting week next week. We got lots of earnings. I think, the last week of May, maybe we have the flounders a little more on the Nasdaq. Maybe it, stabilizes and we get a rally. But I think either the last week of May or the first week of June, I'm a big believer that we're going higher. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. I showed you a ton of charts that are set up and we're good to go. Have a great weekend. Enjoy Memorial Day. We'll be back Tuesday. Never give up. Thank you for watching.